Doug has king queen suited, terrible turn. Like essentially, even if an ace in spades would be so much better, ace in clubs, the one out you don't want to see. The battle between the titans continues. Daniel Negreanu against Doug Polk. They started playing online, and today I'm going to be reviewing a couple of key spots, big pots, but also spots where I do believe you guys can learn a lot from. And yeah, let's just jump right into the action. The first hand that has gotten my attention was where Doug opens pre-flop with ace-9 and Daniel Negreanu defends his big blind. And the flop comes jack 5 jack, and this is always a spot, heads up, where most of the time nobody's gonna have anything on this board. So having an ace high is probably quite strong. So the way you want to approach it is that, of course, if you start c-betting every ace high, every king high, every queen high, everything that has showdown value on a paired board, heads up, you're making yourself very vulnerable, very susceptible against check raises. So you definitely want to be mixing some check backs. I think betting your strongest ace highs where you get calls from weaker ace highs, especially if you have a 9 or an 8 where your opponent with some backdoor straight draw opportunities. Let's say if Daniel has queen 8 or queen 9, he's going to be floating. If he has king 8, king 9. So the queen highs and king highs with an over to the 5 are going to be calling. So I think value betting ace king, ace queen, ace 9, ace 10 is pretty smart. And then checking back something like ace 4, ace 6, ace 3. If your opponent is not super aggressive on the flop, you can just go ahead and c-bet all of these ace highs. But you have to pay very much attention and adjust depending on how your opponent is approaching these boards. So of course, you might say, well, Ben, isn't he going to, aren't you going to protect with your, let's say, ace 3 against his 9-8? Well, the thing is that also a lot of these combos, so let's say 6-7 suited, 9-8 suited, queen 10 suited, those combos are going to be calling, or at least when they have a backdoor flush, they're going to be bluff raising, right? So something like 6-4 in diamonds is actually a pretty good combo to bluff raise here in Daniel Negreanu's situation, or from his point of view. So always keep that in mind. And I think now our main focus should always be, do we have a value bet here? And I think with these ace highs, as I mentioned, we can start value betting. So then it goes check check on the turn, and as far as I remember, Doug had the ace 9, and I think the check back on the turn is totally reasonable. I don't really think you want to. You could argue for like another small protection bet, especially when now a lot of queen high, king high flush draws are going to be calling, some weaker ace highs, ace 3, ace 4. Also, Daniel would probably check raise a lot of jack X on the flop already. So yeah, and you protect against hands like queen 8. And on the river, something very interesting happens, and I think this is a mistake here by Doug, where he has his ace 9, even though Daniel chooses a relatively large sizing. I mean, if he bets pot and bigger, I don't see any option than calling. But I think against that sizing, even though it's relatively big, I think ace 9 is just such a strong holding that we have a clear value raise. Daniel is gonna have a 5 way more often than, let's say, a jack, and also he's not defending jack 4 off or jack 3 off, right? He's gonna have mostly suited jack X combos, but then on the flip side, Daniel can easily value bet a 5. I mean, once Doug check backs the turn, he's going to have ace 3, ace 4 a decent amount of the time that he opted to c-bet on the flop. Again, he might have a different strategy than I would have. He can have easily ace 8, ace 7, ace king, ace 10, all these hands, and he has to defend some ace highs here. So the problem I see is with just calling that he misses value. He misses value against the 5 and a 9. Daniel can easily have queen 9, 10-9 suited floats, king 9 maybe something like 9-8 suited with a backdoor flush draw. And I don't think Daniel would fold these combos. I mean, Doug has proven that he plays very aggressively on the river. Remember in the first session where he was check raising a lot on the river with very weak holdings, right? We have analyzed a couple of these spots in my previous video. So I think here I would raise to 7,000, and yeah, just if he runs into Jack. But I think VV is a little bit higher than calling, and especially heads up, you shouldn't be afraid of your opponent having. It's actually so much better that there are 2 jacks out there than just 1 jack, so it makes it way less likely that Daniel is going to have a jack here. So I think a slight mistake here by Doug, maybe, and I can see why. Remember in the first session we talked about how tricky Daniel plays, right? How little he's value betting on the turn, how often he's checking back very strong hands. So he will actually do that also out of position, right? But on the other side, he's still going to have all these 9x combos, and it's not said that he will never raise a jack on the flop. He will still check raise some jack x, maybe less than other opponents, and that's where Doug might have thought, okay, he's going to end up having more jack x than other opponents. But I think still there's too many 9x and 5x combos where Doug is just not representing anything. And if you would be in Daniel's shoes and you get there with a 5 or 9, you know that you're essentially almost top of your range, apart from a few slow plays. But it's just how it is, and I would have liked to see a value raise there from Doug. I mean, just alone the king 9 off combos that Daniel has, or queen 9 off combos, or then the 10-9 suited combos, and then additionally all the 5x combos. I think Daniel will certainly going to hero call some of these, especially knowing how aggressively Doug Polk played in their first session on rivers. Let's jump right into the next spot. 3-bet pot. Daniel opens the action to 1,000, 2.5x big blinds. Doug Polk 3-bets to around 4,000. He c-bets this board. I'm gonna spoiler right away here because it's easier to analyze. Doug has king queen suited, terrible turn. Like essentially, even if an ace and spades would be so much better, ace and clubs, the one out you don't want to see. And Daniel checks back once again. He can have everything. He can have 2 pairs. He can have flushes. He can have very strong holdings. And I think now, I mean, Doug has the option to block bet the river against weaker king x. I don't think Daniel in a 3-bet pot is going to value bet a weaker king x against what? Maybe jacks and queens with 1 club, but then Doug is going to have better king x. He's going to have some slow plays, and he's going to have ace x. So here, I don't think a king 10, where it's a 3-bet pot, also they already bet on 1 street. I don't think it would be a smart value bet. Not terrible though, but just saying that, yeah. And now on the river, Daniel bets, and very often in tournament poker, and on poker in general, we're going to end up in that position. Heads up here is a little different, where ranges are incredibly wide. He's going to call a 3-bet with jack 9, 10 9, 6 5, and even something like queen jack in diamonds, or queen jack with the queen in clubs. So even though Doug Polk is aware of the fact that Daniel is playing very tricky, there's no way he can fold here. I think I've read somewhere, I don't know, it was on our Discord or somewhere else in the comments, that was a stupid call. No, I don't think it's a stupid call. I think it's a good call, because it's super easy to overbluff this spot. It looks like a scary board, but the value bets that Daniel has are the ace-x floats on the flop, so like something like ace-9 in diamonds. He's not going to be calling like ace-5 in hearts on this flop. So it's an ace-x with backdoor flush draw, or very strong ace-x like ace-jack, ace-10. Yes, there are a bunch of combos, but then also just think about the 10-9 combos, 6-5 suited. Daniel is probably going to be calling all jack 10 off combos preflop with a gut shot against that very small size. He's going to be calling all of those. If he has queen jack with a backdoor flush draw, he's going to be calling. So then additionally, also Daniel shows up here with a 6-4 in diamonds, probably any kind of gut shot hand, right? And he can't bluff all of those, because he's also going to value bet some of his value bets on the turn. So even though Daniel is very likely going to show up with more value hands than others, given his tricky nature, I would think, or I'm pretty sure this is still a very good call here in the long run, and not even close. And yeah, Duck is going to have king X a lot of the time. He's going to have jacks and tens. Yeah, he could have like an ace 5 in diamonds, and now he checks his all onto the river. But also some of the ace X want to value bet himself because he knows Daniel is going to be checking back king X a lot of the time. So I think king X is just a mandatory hero call here. Just try always to think about, okay, how many bluffs my opponent can have. Does it make sense, right? Try to connect the dots, and here in that case, it's just super easy to overbluff. This is always the key question I'm asking myself when I'm in a situation where I have to bluff catch. Are there a lot of natural bluffs possible? Remember, I made a video once about this kind of situation where you enter bluff catching, how many natural bluffs are possible. And here, if you analyze it from Duck's perspective, you can say there are infinite amount of combos possible, right? So some opponents, of course, they're not capable of bluffing, they're the nittiest opponent, then we still want to fold despite of the fact that there are a ton of bluffs possible. But this is then a more exploitative thing here where two excellent players are clashing against each other. You definitely don't want to deviate from your strategy where Daniel can essentially bluff so many combos. And as we've seen, Doug also, not even using his time bank, essentially snap calling because he knows exactly what is going on. That just shows how much experience he has, and he's not hesitating at all to make a good hero call here in a 3-bet pot. Two big key hands that were played at the same time that were very interesting, and I want to analyze both of them. Doug opens the action, also now raising around 2.4x. Daniel 3-bets around 4.5 times. So relatively large 3-bet sizing. It's totally reasonable, and the flop comes 10, 9, 8 in hearts. So this is a very, very unique board texture, and I have to admit, these are definitely not the spots I have studied the most. So even for tournament poker, I would very often struggle finding the proper strategy because it connects with both ranges. I do think that Daniel can do some betting because he's supposed to be 3-betting a lot of suited combos. He's supposed to be 3-betting a lot of suited connectors, and that also connects with that board. So he's also going to have a lot of nutted hands. He's going to have queen jack a lot of the time. He's going to have flushes a lot of the time. So does Doug. And usually on the board where both players have an equal amount of nutted combos, I think Doug has more nutted combos because Daniel is not going to be 3-betting all of the nut flushes, like ace 5 in hearts or ace 4 in hearts. Ace 6 in hearts is very likely going to be just calling pre-flop, right? And Doug has all flushes apart from ace king in hearts. So I think that's why I'm pretty sure it's a very high checking frequency board, maybe with a very low betting strategy, simply because the most amount of value combos in your range, like aces, kings, queens, when you don't have a heart, you don't really want to do a lot of betting. You want to check, you're going to give your opponent a lot of free cards, but you can't go 3 streets for value. You can't go broke on this board texture here when you don't have a heart. So you have to check back and just pray for somewhat decent run out, and then decide on later streets. And then essentially even folding against a lot of action. Then you chooses a very small sizing. I don't expect a lot of folds. I mean, what is really folding? Maybe 4-3 in spades or 4-5 in spades, but those aren't a lot of combos. And of course, like the suited ace 5 in clubs kind of combos, right? I would guess that's like 15% of Doug's range. Everything else that is a pair or a draw is going to be calling, even like king, queen in spades. Daniel then goes for the second barrel. I think, this is a good card that he wants to barrel with. It's really hard now for him to have bluffs apart from ace jack, ace queen, but all of his bluffs are going to have equity, and then he jams the river, which I think with his hand, pocket nines, is totally fine. I mean, Doug is having a straight here and snap calls. That's just, I think, a setup. You can argue for checking on the flop. I would lean more towards trying to check and then take it from there. I probably want to be more polarized, like a lot of flushes. A set is for sure fine. Don't get me wrong. I think it's just a cooler And yeah, from Duck's perspective, I think I personally would have raised this combo, because let's say the jack gets there, the 7 gets there, heart gets there, you're not going to get any more value from the sets, right? So I understand that he wants to leverage his position advantage, and maybe he thought that, you know, he's going to sacrifice a little bit EV on the flop to take Daniel on the streets, play in position against him later on, and he gives himself such an edge that he sacrifices a little bit of EV to sometimes have an action killer. On the other side, if Daniel triple barrels his ace-5 with ace and hearts here, then of course it looks like a genius play. And Daniel Duck did everything right. But I think on this board, Daniel has a lot of 2 pairs. He's going to have a lot of, like, if he has jacks with, you know, the jack and heart, or queens, a queen and hearts, he's not going to go anywhere. He can have like ace 10, ace and hearts, a lot of hands he's going broke with, where on a lot of runouts he's not going to get the stack in. So for me, it seems like I might be missing some GTO stuff here, but I'm pretty sure that we're going to do some raising, especially with this combo, or like 6-7, jack-7 not having a heart. I mean, we're not going to be calling 6-7 off, right? So most of the time we're going to not have a flush draw coming with our hand. So I would have preferred raising on the flop here. But pretty clean run out, and he gets all the money. And at the same time, we see on the left side another pot evolving where Daniel opens to 2.5x and Duck 3 bets, and Daniel calls. The flop comes queen 9-8 with 2 spades. Duck Polk decides to bet 1/4 pot, which I think is fine. The turn is the 10 in spades, which is okay for both. I think it slightly favors Daniel, who's going to be calling more jack-X. Like, Daniel has ace jack, king jack, queen jack, jack 10, jack 9, jack 8, jack 7, maybe even down to jack 5 suited. Off-suited combos, probably jack 9, jack 10. And Duck is, yeah, he's going to have ace jack, king jack, 3 betting for value, suited and off-suited. But then suited, mostly just jack 10, queen jack, maybe some jack 9 combos. So you can see that this card is way better for Daniel. Also, the spade brings way more flushes, right? Daniel is going to have all ace-high, king-high flushes raising and calling as a 3-bet, whereas Duck is doing a mixed strategy, sometimes 3-betting those, sometimes calling. So this now is a great card for Daniel, a terrible card for Duck, and Daniel actually goes for a very large sizing, which if he starts turning an 8 or 9 into bluff, I think it's fine, but I would really struggle finding a lot of bluffs for this sizing. Maybe if he has ace 7 with the ace in spades. Yeah, it's not too bad, but I think it's very easy to overfold in these spots, because, as I said, it's very hard to find enough bluffs on this board. Duck calls, so maybe he has a queen, or yeah, ace king, ace queen with 1 spade. I mean, even ace queen no redraw, I think wants to start folding. You're going to be drawing that a lot of the time. And then Daniel chooses a very weird sizing. He bets essentially 1/6 pot, or like 1/5 pot, so like 20% pot. I think he just want to be shoving. Like, he can also be shoving his 8-7. He can be shoving his 9, like turning a lot of hands into bluffs, simply because he has so many more flushes, taking a lot of bluffing, or bluffing a lot in this spot. I think, yeah, I'm not a big fan of the sizing. Not sure if there's some exploitative meta stuff going on between the two of them. Maybe Daniel, the only reason why he might pick that sizing is that he wouldn't find those bluffs, so he wants to give Duck the best possible price. It would make sense. Like, sometimes when in the situation where I know I have perceived not a lot of bluffs and I play against a good opponent, then I try to manipulate my opponent's decision making by choosing a sizing where I know he's not going to be folding, because I know if I would go bigger, he would always fold. He would, because population is not going to find enough bluffs. So I think, like here, if he jams, even if Duck has ace queen, I'm not sure how how good Doug is in those spots folding and deviating from GTO, but I just would expect that Daniel always has a flush or a straight. Again, he would need to turn king 8, king 9, 8, 7, like all these hands into bluff, simply because just has such an enormous amount of value hands. And Doug needs to start folding a lot of his, like, even sometimes 2 pairs, kings, or if he has ace king here. It's just a very crazy board texture. So yeah, from a theoretical standpoint, I'm not 100% sure if that sizing is a thing. I wouldn't use that sizing. I would just have an all-in or fold sizing. I would be bluffing, let's say 8-7. I would be bluffing king 8 or king 9, I think. And not sure how many of those combos, but I would definitely try to turn some of these pairs into bluffs, since I would expect to get a lot of credit on this board, and also my opponent to lay down good hands. I would never do that against the recreational. Doug calls, unfortunately, we don't see what he had, but I would expect like a 2 pair, just, making that side call. Maybe a set, maybe aces, maybe queens, maybe nines, we don't know. Maybe even had a straight, but I think a straight, if he has queen jack, he might consider value shoving the river, but then on the other side, it doesn't really make sense. So I think Doug either had a straight or 2 pair type of hand, and Daniel shows up with a 4-5 in hearts. And the first session online was a big success for Doug. I think I'm not even sure. Maybe we can display the current standing, the current result. They're going to be returning now. Today is Monday. I think they return today. And so far, it has been a very exciting battle. I'm surprised about the creativity by Daniel, I have to admit. Of course, you see more fundamental, theoretical, I wouldn't say leaks. If you compare it with Doug, you see that Doug is just way overall theoretically more profound, more solid, but I would say Daniel is the more creative one. Not saying that it's always good, but I just have the feeling that he's really trying out different things. As far as I know, he's only using 2 sizings, like very small or like around 80% pot. So in terms of the lines he's taking, checking, batting, sometimes being a bit tricky, I would say he's a little bit more creative. When it comes to the sizings, you can see Doug is a little bit more creative, overbet shoving turns. I remember there was a hand in a 3-bet pot, which I haven't seen from Daniel yet. I haven't seen all of the hands. I've seen most of the stuff, so maybe I was missing something. So take everything a little bit with a grain of salt. But that's my impression so far. If you guys have a different impression, that's totally fine. Don't take it too personal, but it's great for poker. You love to see it, and I'm very excited for the next session.